It is late morning, the 6th of July, 2014. We are in the quiet riverside town of Pierreville, Quebec. The sun is high, the humidity is rising. Yvon Guévin, 75 years old, is sitting behind the wheel of his 1989 Jeep Cherokee. He is a fixture of this town, a former city councilor, a man everyone knows by face and by name. Sitting in the passenger seat beside him is his best friend, a miniature pinscher mix named Costard. The dog's ears are perked up. He is ready for a ride. Yvon is smiling. He has just left the local hardware store. He has errands to run. He has plans. This is the picture of a perfect, mundane Sunday. It is the definition of normal. Yvon picks up his phone. He dials a friend, a fishing buddy. The conversation is brief. It is practical. Yvon says, quote, "I'm going to get you. I'm going to drive to you from my house in 13 minutes. 13 minutes. He hangs up. The clock starts ticking. 1 minute passes. 5 minutes pass. 10 minutes. 13 minutes. The friend waits by the door, but the green Jeep never pulls into the driveway. Maybe traffic, maybe a flat tire. The friend calls back. Silence. Just the empty ringing of a phone that no longer has a hand to hold it. In that 13-minute window, a glitch occurs in reality. A man, a 2-ton steel vehicle, and a dog simply evaporate. There are no skid marks on the road. There are no witnesses screaming for help. There is no smoke rising from the trees. Yvon Guévin does not leave town. He does not cross the border. He vanishes into a silence that will last for 11 years. 4,019 days. His family will be left to wonder if he ran away, if he was murdered, or if he took his own life. But the truth is far colder. Yvon Guévin didn't go far. In fact, for the next decade, while his family wept and the police searched, he was waiting right there, hidden in the only place where screams cannot be heard. Welcome to the anatomy of a disappearance. To understand the mystery of the 13-minute vanishing, we must first look at the man behind the wheel. Yvon Guévin is not a stranger to this community. He helped build it. As a former city councilor, he knows these roads better than anyone. He knows the people. He knows the rhythm of Pierreville. But in July 2014, Yvon is fighting a silent battle. He is 75. His health is failing. There are medical reports of high blood pressure severe enough to risk a stroke. There are whispers in the community about a nervous breakdown, depression, memory loss. These details are important, not just for his medical history, but because they will become the foundation of a decade-long lie. When a man with depression disappears, the human mind jumps to the darkest conclusion: suicide, voluntary departure. The police look at his file. They see depression. They see nervous breakdown. And the investigation subtly shifts gears. They stop looking for a crime scene. They start looking for a tragedy. But there is a flaw in this theory, a massive logical fracture. Let's look at his inventory for July 6th. He goes to the hardware store. Why does a man planning to end his life buy supplies for home repair? He calls his friend. He makes a specific appointment. 13 minutes. Why make a promise you intend to break? And finally, the dog. Costard. Yvon loves that dog. In the psychology of suicide, it is incredibly rare for a person to take their beloved pet with them. They might leave a note. They might leave the door open for the dog to escape. But Yvon buckles Costard into the car. This is not the behavior of a man saying goodbye. This is the behavior of a man going fishing. Let's redrive that fatal route. The River Loop. It is a scenic drive that Yvon loves. It traces the spine of the Saint-François River. But in rural Quebec, beauty often masks danger. The infrastructure here is old. The roads were paved over horse trails and boat launches from a century ago. There is a specific intersection on this loop, a T intersection. Imagine you are driving. You are moving at 40, maybe 50 kilometers per hour. You approach the end of the road. To the left is the town, to the right is the highway. But straight ahead is nothing. No guardrail, no flashing lights, no warning signs, just a drop-off. And below that drop-off lies the Saint-François River. This river is not a swimming pool. It is a monster. Near the confluence with the Street Lawrence, the current is strong. The water is turbid like chocolate milk. If you drop a set of keys in this water, they are gone. If you drop a Jeep Cherokee, the river swallows it just as easily. The water is deep here, 11 meters, 36 feet. Deep enough to block out the sun. Deep enough to hide a secret for a generation. On the 6th of July 2014, the river is waiting. Yvon Guévin leaves the hardware store. He turns onto the loop. He is 13 minutes away from safety. And then, silence. No phone signal, no tire tracks. The police arrive days later. They scan the banks. They look for broken branches. They look for skid marks. They find nothing. Why? Because if a driver is asleep, or unconscious, or dead before they hit the water, they don't hit the brakes. They don't swerve. They simply drive off the edge of the world. For 11 years, Dominique Guevin, Yvon's daughter, sits by the phone. She lives in what psychologists call ambiguous loss. It is a torture worse than grief. Without a body, there is no funeral. Without a funeral, there is no goodbye. There is only the void. The police file goes cold. The rumors spread. He ran away. He killed himself. But the truth is rusting silently, just 5 kilometers from his front door. And it will take a group of strangers armed with technology that didn't exist in 2014 to finally hear the river speak. Days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into years. The Sûreté du Québec does their job. They interview neighbors. They fly helicopters over the forests. They run Yvon's credit cards. But there is nothing. Zero financial activity. No sightings. The file on Yvon Guévin begins to gather dust. The investigators are stuck in a psychological trap. They are human. They look at the medical history, depression, nervous breakdown, and the narrative sets like concrete. He wanted to leave, they whisper. He found a deep spot in the woods. He doesn't want to be found. This is the red herring of the missing person world. Once you label a missing man as suicidal, the urgency to scan every inch of the riverbed evaporates. Why search for an accident if you believe it was a choice? For Dominique Guévin, this theory is a knife in the heart. She knows her father. She knows he wouldn't leave her without a word. And she knows he would never, ever hurt Costad. But the system demands closure. 7 years pass. It is now 2021. The law requires an answer, even if there isn't one. So, a judge signs a piece of paper. Yvon Guévin is declared legally dead. It is a bureaucratic death, a death by paperwork. But it brings no peace. Dominique later describes this time as living in the void, dans le néant. Every time the phone rings, she jumps. Every time a car pulls into the driveway, her heart stops. Is it him? Did he just forget who he was? Is he living in a hospital somewhere with amnesia? The human mind will invent 1,000 impossible stories to avoid the one simple, brutal truth. Meanwhile, the true villain of this story remains undefeated: the Saint-François River. In 2014, underwater search technology exists, but it is expensive. It is rare. Police dive teams are not deployed on a hunch. They need a target. And without skid marks, without a witness, there is no target. The river is dark. It is full of silt, logs, and debris. Searching it without coordinates is like searching a pitch-black warehouse with a matchstick. Yvon's Jeep is resting there, year after year. The green paint is covered in algae. The tires are buried in mud. Boats drive over him. Fishermen cast lines over him. The town of Pierreville lives its life on the surface, completely unaware that their missing counselor is attending every sunrise and every sunset, just 11 meters beneath their feet. July 2025. 11 years and 4 days after the disappearance. A convoy rolls into Pierreville. This is not the police. This is not the military. This is Exploring with a Mission, EWAM, led by Bill McIntosh and Dan Pritchard. These men represent a new era of forensics. They are the citizen searchers. They don't have badges. They don't have subpoenas. But they have two things the police in 2014 did not have. First, consumer-grade side-scan sonar that is sharper than a medical X-ray. And second, a complete lack of bias. They don't care about the depression theory. They don't care about the rumors. They only care about physics and math. The team sits down with the original detective. They sit down with Yvon's friend. They ask the same questions that were asked 11 years ago, but they hear something different. The friend repeats the final phone call. "I am coming to get you. I will be there in 13 minutes. Most people hear 13 minutes and think, soon. Bill and Dan hear 13 minutes and think, distance equals rate times time. This is the Sherlock Holmes moment. They stop looking at the man. They start looking at the map. The team gets in their car. They start at the hardware store. They start the timer. They drive. They try the main highway. Too fast. He would have arrived in 8 minutes. They try the back roads. Too slow. Then they try the river loop. It is the scenic route, the route an old fisherman would take on a Sunday drive. They drive. The timer ticks. 9 minutes. 10 minutes. They approach a T intersection. The road ends. If you turn left, you go to the friend's house. If you go straight, you go into the river. They check the stopwatch. If Yvon had made that turn, he would have arrived at the friend's house exactly at the 13-minute mark. The math is perfect. The deduction is terrifying. He didn't run away. He didn't get lost. He simply missed a turn. This changes everything. For a decade, the search area was the province of Quebec. Suddenly, the search area is 50 meters of water. The team looks at the river. It is murky. It is fast. But now, they have an X on the map. They launch the boat. They turn on the sonar. And they prepare to look into the past. The 11th of July, 2025. The team is on the water. They are scanning the area just off the bank of the T intersection. This is not like looking with your eyes. In this river, eyes are useless. They are looking with sound. Side-scan sonar works by shouting at the riverbed and listening to the echo. Mud absorbs sound, it looks dark on the screen. Steel reflects sound, it glows bright gold. Bill McIntosh watches the monitor. He is looking for hard returns. He is looking for right angles. Nature does not make boxes. Nature makes curves. Nature makes chaos. Only humans make straight lines. And then, there it is. A shape emerges from the digital noise. It is geometric. It is rectangular. And most importantly, it casts a long acoustic shadow. This shadow tells them the object is standing proud of the bottom. It is tall. It is sitting at a depth of 11 meters, 36 feet. The team circles the boat. They pass over it again from a different angle. The shape resolves. It is roughly 4 meters long, 2 meters wide. It is consistent with a mid-sized SUV. And it is resting on its roof. This is a critical detail. SUVs are top-heavy. When they sink, the weight of the engine drags the nose down and they flip. An inverted car is the signature of a tragedy. The team marks the GPS coordinates. The laughter on the boat stops. The chatter stops. Because that amber smudge on the screen isn't just metal. It is likely a tomb. Confirming a target on a screen is one thing. Touching it is another. The Saint-François River is not a friendly place to dive. The current is ripping near the confluence. The water is turbid. That is a polite word for blind. The visibility is measured in inches. Divers call this diving by braille. You don't see the wreck. You feel it. Dan Pritchard suits up. He checks his regulator. He rolls backward off the boat. Splash. He descends the anchor line. The sunlight fades instantly. Green turns to gray. Gray turns to black. At 30 feet, he is in absolute void. He is alone with the sound of his own breathing, and whatever is waiting for him at the bottom. Dan reaches the bottom. His hand reaches out into the darkness. He feels mud. He feels a log. And then he feels cold. Slime-covered steel. He runs his hand along the object. A tire. A wheel well. A long, flat roof. He is upside down, oriented with the vehicle. He traces the shape. It is boxy, rigid. A 1989 Jeep Cherokee. He moves to the rear of the vehicle. This is the moment of truth. He needs the license plate. But after 11 years, the plate is covered in a thick layer of biofouling algae and silt. He has to scrub it. Imagine the sensation. You are 36 feet underwater, in the dark, scrubbing the license plate of a car that hasn't been seen since 2014. He cleans it. He shines his light. He reads the numbers. The code is relayed to the surface. Bill checks the police file. The numbers match. It is Yvon Guévin's Jeep. The mystery is over, but the horror is just beginning. Dan shines his light through the rear window. The glass is intact. The doors are locked. The pressure of the water kept this cabin sealed for a decade. Inside, floating in the silt, are the remnants of a life interrupted. Fishing gear, a hardware store bag, and skeletal remains. 2 sets. 1 human. 1 canine. Costard is still there, faithful to the end. He didn't run away. He didn't abandon his master. They went down together. The forensic story tells us exactly what happened. Yvon was driving the loop. Maybe he had a stroke. Maybe he got confused. He approached the T intersection. His foot never touched the brake. The Jeep launched off the embankment. It hit the water. It floated for maybe 60 seconds. Inside, panic. The water rose. The electronics shorted out. The heavy engine dipped the nose. The car flipped. And then, the slow, silent descent to the bottom. 13 minutes away from his friend. But an eternity away from help. Now that the Jeep is found, we must conduct the final autopsy of the truth. For 11 years, 3 theories competed for the soul of this case. Let's dismantle them. Theory number 1, the voluntary departure. This was the police favorite, the depression theory. But looking at the wreckage, this theory disintegrates. Why? Because of the hardware store receipt found in the passenger seat. A man planning to die does not buy nails. He does not buy light bulbs. He buys those things because he plans to fix his porch tomorrow. And he certainly does not bring costard. If Yvon wanted to end his pain, he would have left the dog at home. The presence of the dog is not just tragic. It is forensic proof of his intent to live. Theory number 2, foul play. Was he run off the road? Was he hijacked? The divers found the doors locked from the inside. The windows were intact. There were no bullet holes, no signs of a struggle. This leaves us with the third theory, the rational horror, the accident. Yvon was 75. He had a history of high blood pressure. The leading hypothesis is a medical episode, a stroke, a heart attack, a sudden blackout. Imagine the terror of that moment. His foot freezes on the gas pedal, his hands lock on the wheel. He sees the river coming, but his body refuses to obey his mind. He hits the water. And then, the physics of the trap. A sinking car is a sealed vault. The water pressure against the doors is thousands of pounds. Even a young, strong man struggles to open a door underwater. For a 75-year-old man, confused and possibly paralyzed by a stroke, it was impossible. He didn't choose this. Gravity chose it for him. But the recovery of Yvon Guévin revealed something even darker than his death. It revealed a systemic blindness. Just days after finding Yvon, this same volunteer team, EWAM, moved to another river nearby, the Mille Els River. And guess what they found? Another car. Another missing man, Robert St. Louis, missing for 37 years. Found in minutes. This is the chilling realization. Yvon was not an anomaly. Our rivers are not just water. They are invisible graveyards. Because we drive next to them every day. We build roads that point directly at them. And we assume that if a car went in, we would see it. We wouldn't. The water heals itself instantly. The ripples fade in seconds. And the silt covers the metal in days. Yvon was hidden by the very geography he loved. When the crane lifted that green Jeep out of the water, mud pouring from the windows, it was a gruesome sight. But for Dominique Guevin, it was beautiful. It was vindication. For a decade, people whispered that her father abandoned her, that he was a coward who ran away. The car proved them wrong. He was exactly where he said he would be, on his way to a friend. He didn't leave, he was taken. And, most importantly, he wasn't alone. When they opened the car, they found Yvon, and they found Costaude, together, loyal to the very last breath. There is a strange paradox in the world of missing persons. Grief is terrible, but ambiguous loss is torture. For 11 years, Dominique Guévin couldn't mourn. How do you mourn a man who might walk through the door tomorrow? But now, she can. The recovery of the body allows the family to trade hope for peace. It is a heavy trade, but it is necessary. The community of Pierreville does something remarkable. They don't just mourn, they celebrate. Not his death, but his return. The ghost of Pierreville is no longer a ghost. He is an ancestor. He has a plot in the cemetery. He has a date of death. The question mark that hung over the town for a decade has finally been straightened into an exclamation point. But as we close this file, the echo of the crash still rings. Yvon's death was an accident, but was it preventable? We look at that T intersection. We look at the aging population of our rural towns. We look at the lack of guardrails. Yvon Guévin didn't die because he was careless. He died because the margin for error in this world is razor thin. One missed turn, one medical glitch, 1 second of confusion, and the difference between home and the void disappears. His death forces us to look at our own roads differently. Every unshielded riverbank is a trap waiting for a victim. The disappearance of Yvon Guévin is a terrifying reminder of a truth we try to forget. Civilization is a thin veneer. We drive our cars, we check our GPS, we feel like masters of the world. But just 5 meters from the asphalt, the rules of humanity do not apply. The river is not malicious, it is not evil. It is indifferent. It does not care if you are a beloved father. It does not care if you are a city councilor. It does not care if you have a loyal dog sitting next to you. It only cares about gravity. Yvon Guévin drove into the light of a perfect summer Sunday, and the river kept him. It held him in its cold embrace for 4,000 days, while the world above argued about suicide and murder. In the end, the solution wasn't a detective's badge. It wasn't a magnifying glass. It was a stopwatch. 13 minutes. That simple promise was the breadcrumb trail that led him home. It reminds us that sometimes the biggest mysteries are solved by the smallest details, and that no matter how deep the water or how dark the silt, nothing stays hidden forever. Not if you know where to look, and not if you refuse to stop looking. This case was solved by volunteers using technology you can buy at a sporting goods store. Do you believe there are other Yvon Guévins in the rivers near your town? Should the government be doing more to scan these waterways? Let me know your theory in the comments below. If this story moved you, if it chilled you, please hit that subscribe button. We are building a community of investigators here, and I need you on the team for the next case. Until then, watch the road, watch the water, and tell your family you love them. Because 13 minutes can change everything.